What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic, and in today's video, we're going to talk about who the next Disney CEO may be, and I think we're starting to get a decent idea of who that might be. I can really only imagine the behind the scenes of this might break out like a soap opera or like the show Succession, which is kind of Hollywood Reporter is saying here. And this article here is Inside Hollywood's Succession Wars, a look behind the battle lines of the industry's real-life Game of Thrones, from the ever-shifting power struggles at Disney. And then we're not going to talk about the other machinations of top agencies. And it says, much like in the HBO show Succession, the likeliest heir apparent to Bob Iger is an ever-changing source of intrigue. The most likely internal candidates remain from left Josh D'Amaro, Jimmy Pitaro, Dana Walden, and Alan Bergman, who are in this photo painting thing here. It says, there are many qualities that will be required to become the next CEO of Walt Disney Company. Boldness, intelligence, poise, but at a recent offsite corporate retreat, Disney's current leader, Bob Iger, offered another piece of advice for a top-level executive. You need to be more selfish. What Iger meant, according to the source who relayed the comment, was that the execs vying to succeed him must be willing to go to an extraordinary lengths to beat out their competitors. It might seem like odd advice coming from a leader with a public image as a smooth strategist whose roughest edge is that he works so hard and he showers in his office sometimes twice. I think he's known for more things than that, but okay. But as Iger himself has noted, when he ran ABC in the early 1990s, he employed what he called soft autocracy to push through ideas that met resistance. More recently, after hand-selecting Bob Chapek as his successor, how'd that go? Back in 2020, he reportedly spent the next 2 years undermining and outmaneuvering his successor behind the scenes. He absolutely did that. Bob Iger never really actually left. He was still the president of the board, or chairman of the board, and during Chapek's reign, or his tenure, whatever you want to call it, he reported to the board and Bob Iger. So this whole idea that Bob Iger left and then was never involved in the stuff that Chapek did was just the look what he did, and I got to come clean this mess up. Bob Iger was still involved. I don't think Bob Chapek was he may have been doing some things Iger didn't like, but at the end of the day, I think he was still doing the things that Iger wanted to be done for the most part, setting the stage for his own triumphant comeback. When it comes to advice about taking power, the man clearly knows what he's talking about. Disney firmly denies the characterization of Iger's return as well as the executive's account of the conversation. That is not something Bob said or would ever say, and the incident described simply never happened, says Chief Communication Officer Christina Shockey, maybe? I'm terrible with names sometimes. For the execs battling to succeed Iger, like entertainment co-head Dana Walden and Parks honcho Josh D'Amaro, not to mention the whole cadre of Hollywood strivers eager for top jobs throughout town, being overly aggressive comes off at the risk of looking desperate. You must be auditioning constantly but never overtly. As any outlet that covers Hollywood machinations knows, angry PR people working for top lieutenants call in a fury not only when their boss slips a rung on an executive power list, but also when they are mentioned as a potential heir apparent, because no one wants to risk looking like they are gunning for the crown before the king is ready to give it up. Welcome to Hollywood's modern Game of Thrones. All across the entertainment industry, there are pitched power struggles quietly being waged for the top gigs at CAA, Sony, Lucasfilm, and other power centers that will determine the leadership of Hollywood's top institutions for years to come. Last year, across the U.S. economy, a record 2,221 CEOs stepped down, the highest level of turnover since 2002. In Hollywood, too, a generational turnover is happening, if too slowly for some, and is prompting all sorts of questions. What will this new cadre of leaders look like? How will they emulate the leaders who came before? And what will be the metrics of success be in a town that's reinventing itself? Well, I think you'd also look at Hollywood is... I don't think Hollywood's ever going to be what it was. So you're looking at Disney specifically. I mean, Disney is mostly a theme park company. You look at how much they make. They make all their money, or most of their money comes from the theme parks, and the shows and the movie side isn't bringing as much revenue as the theme parks is. So I think it's very interesting how Disney still looked at many ways as, obviously they make movies and they have Disney Plus, but most of their money is coming from the parks, and it does require a certain set of skills that I think most companies' CEOs wouldn't necessarily require. Meanwhile, some top jobs remain up for grabs at Disney, of course, but also at subsidiary Lucasfilm, where accomplished yet controversial CEO Kathleen Kennedy is expected to end her reign shortly after Iger ends his. I will believe that when I see it. Anytime you see something like Kathleen Kennedy is going away, First off, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy going away is going to fix Lucasfilm or Star Wars, just because more than likely whoever replaces her is going to be of the same mindset, because I just think at this point that's just what Lucasfilm is. So as much as I do put blame on Kathleen Kennedy for ruining Star Wars, I think whoever steps up in her place, unless it was an outside hire, somebody else that wants to come in and reinvent what Lucasfilm is, which I think would be a good choice. If you just get somebody within Lucasfilm, I think it just ends up being, status quo and just keep going on as they've done, which makes no sense given that Star Wars is not doing well, nor Lucasfilm. I mean, look at not only Star Wars, but the Indiana Jones latest movie. You got Willow that was erased off of Disney Plus. Like any franchise that is attached to Lucasfilm has had, at the very least, you can say a lot of brand damage done to it, and Kathleen Kennedy's still there. So I just contend, even if she's gone, I'll believe it when I see it in terms of it changing, but I don't believe any of the reports that say when she's going away, because those reports have been around for 6-7 years now, and she's still there. And there's no pressure seemingly from anybody at Disney that she needs to leave either. So I just don't see it. They go on to talk about how, or maybe the Hollywood culture has just changed too much to make that kind of Machiavellian behavior viable. In recent years, Hollywood has lost some of its mojo. Decades of consolidation, a pandemic, 2 strikes, and a pivot to streaming has resulted in a much smaller industry with fewer top jobs and less money sloshing around. The culture has changed too. Algorithmic tech companies dominate. I mean, Apple and Amazon, they are basically probably the biggest players in Hollywood right now, or some of the biggest players, and they're not traditional Hollywood. And I think that is definitely something that basically you look at Amazon Prime and the video service with that. That is a side project for Jeff Bezos. And at any moment, that thing has been losing money for them. They could just decide to no longer do it, and Hollywood would be in trouble if that were the case. So they've got some, non-traditional high rollers, I guess, big players in Hollywood right now that haven't been there traditionally. Data prevails over instinct and experience. Many of the much caricatured qualities that used to be hallmarks of Hollywood power are now recognized as toxic. The personalities that run this town are much different than the swashbuckling moguls who came before, which probably in many ways they'd be better off going back to. This is kind of like baseball. Baseball's become so, money ball about all the numbers, the analytics of it. And I'm not against analytics, but I think when everything just becomes analytics, you are missing a whole other aspect of something, whether that's baseball or making movies or shows. There is some instinct or something about it that you maybe necessarily can't prove in a spreadsheet or what the numbers say. And everything now is just based only off of numbers. And I think that's one reason why a lot of the content has just been soulless and not only not good and bad writing and things of that nature, but it's also just where it's coming from is just simply says, well, the numbers say this, so make it like this, because we can make this, we can make entertainment an algorithm and have the same results. And I think they're learning in real time. And over the years, that's not really the case. They go on to talk about Disney specifically to say maybe that unpredictability offers some small excuse as to how Disney botched things so badly on Iger's first exit. Needless to say, the do-over is now the most watched succession game in town and maybe the world. Wanting to avoid another debacle, in January, the Disney board added James Gorman, chairman emeritus of Morgan Stanley, to oversee the search, which remains opaque even to high-level Disney insiders. Still, sources say that D'Amaro, the parks and experiences chief, is now in the pole position. The 54-year-old already was overseeing a $60 billion expansion of the parks business before Abu Dhabi, Disney's first new park since 2016, was announced in May. He also is overseeing Disney's expansion into video games via a $1 billion deal with Epic, the maker of Fortnite, which Iger views as a legacy project. One hurdle for D'Amaro is the continuing fallout from Chapek's disastrous run. Before his ascension, he also was the parks guy, and that showed in his inability to communicate with top Hollywood talent and their gatekeepers. They're talking about Chapek specifically. And for that, D'Amaro has publicly tried to highlight the personal relationships he has with creatives to try to preempt that criticism. By contrast, Walden, the longtime television executive, has been rumored as a potential frontrunner since Iger returned, is a popular, well-known figure within Hollywood's talent community. As Disney's first female CEO, her appointment also would carry major symbolic weight. One impediment for Walden, however, is her close friendship with Kamala Harris. Given the vindictiveness of the Trump administration, it's hard not to see the relationship as a potential liability, unfair as that may be. Well, and also, too, Disney is a theme park company. I mean, that is what they are. They make most of their money off the theme parks, and they don't make near as much as they do off of movies and streaming. And obviously, traditional television is shrinking. The movie side for Disney has been very up and down, inconsistent, you could say. They had a pretty, last year they had a good year. This year, Lilo and Stitch is going to make a lot of money. But outside of that, I mean, the movies that came out earlier this year, Captain America, the Thunderbolts, like those didn't make money. Fantastic Four, we'll wait and see. So you've got a lot of up and down on the movie side, but even on the movie side, I mean, if you look at even last year with the hit movies that they had, they paled in comparison to the money that the theme parks brought in. So right then and there, as much as I don't think that Josh D'Amaro is a good choice for the next CEO, personally speaking, I don't think he's done a great job in the park. Now, he has made money for the company, but I think in terms of the park's experience for the guest has not been for the better. But if you're talking about who to take over Disney, somebody with parks experience makes the most sense. And personally, and they may talk about this, I've always felt a dual CEO setup for Disney makes a lot of sense. Look at Bob Iger, Frank Wells, Walt Disney, Roy Disney. Like, I think you could have Josh D'Amaro, if they choose him, be the parks, head of the parks, and have somebody else alongside him that's more of a numbers person, or maybe somebody who has experience when it comes to the movies and TV side. Rounding out the short list of top internal candidates are Alan Bergman, co-chairman of Disney Entertainment, and ESPN honcho Jimmy Pitario. This is the problem at Disney. How can you expect someone from theme parks to understand the process of making television and film? And how can you expect someone from television and film to understand how to work with the Chinese government? Says Stephen Galloway, Dean of Chapman University's Dodge College of Film and Media Arts. What's the old saying? Nobody knows anything. In this case, is nobody knows everything. And they even talk about Lucasfilm a bit. Lucasfilm seems likely to follow their path in replacing Kennedy. Despite speculation about outside candidates, including former 20th Century head Emma Watts, insiders say the company seems most likely to promote from within. Again, I don't think these are good choices. I think Disney and Lucasfilm both need outside fresh blood coming in with new leadership, a new vision to really set them up, personally speaking, but it's probably not going to happen. The current thinking is a scenario where Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni and production head Carrie Beck, both Lucasfilm vets, take co-head roles. Even as an arm of Disney, Lucasfilm remains in many ways a family business, and as George Lucas' protege Filoni long has been considered a golden boy. But the knock against him is that he might be too steeped in Star Wars lore and risks steering a show into dense mythology that loses a broader audience. He's not the Andor guy, he's the Ahsoka guy, says one Disney insider. I mean, I know a lot of people like Dave Filoni, and he has done some good things. I will just say, my opinion on Dave Filoni as time has gone on has not gotten better. It's gotten worse. And I think he seemingly is obsessed with Ahsoka. If you look from the story aspect, like she probably should have died long before. And she keeps re-upping, popping back up. And obviously he likes Ahsoka. He created Ahsoka. But I don't think Dave Filoni is the heir apparent to George Lucas like many people do. I just don't think he is. And I think the stuff he's been involved with recently has kind of proven that it hasn't been, as much as he's been tied to it, and he was consulted on certain things. He was part of the Acolyte. I mean, he was involved with that. So it's not as if Dave Filoni has not had hiccups, I guess you could say, in the Star Wars side of things. Beck, who joined the company in 2012, knows the ins and outs, but neither she nor Filoni has much film experience, which could be mitigated by Kennedy's continued presence as a producer on certain Star Wars projects and certain quality control in the short term. That sounds like the worst thing you could do. Imagine they get rid of Kathleen Kennedy, yet she's still involved in helping make these movies. That'd probably, if she does go away, that's probably what would happen if I were to guess. I mean, when you look at Lucasfilm, I mean, honestly, at this point, they're just all about Star Wars. I mean, they have Indiana Jones, and I love Indiana Jones, but the last two movies there have not been good. I don't really know what you would do with Indiana Jones outside of recasting it, relaunching it, which that in of itself is a tough task, I would say, of recasting. Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford made that character. You could do it, but I think at this point, mostly Lucasfilm is just Star Wars. And given that, I mean, he's not going to get this, but I do wish Sam Witwer was much more involved with what Star Wars does with Lucasfilm, because that guy, in my opinion, I think Sam Witwer is who Dave Filoni wishes that he was. Sam Witwer knows his stuff. He's very good with all the lore. And personally speaking, I trust him way more than I do Dave Filoni. I suppose Dave Filoni has a better chance at being better than Kathleen Kennedy. I mean, he does have more actual Star Wars experience, and really you can't get, I say this, and hopefully it doesn't come true, but you really can't get much worse than what Kathleen Kennedy has done with Star Wars. So I suppose on that end, that is better than her, but at the same time, as I've said, I think outside, talent coming in for both Disney and Lucasfilm is a much better move. And there's even betting odds about the next Disney CEO. This is from a Hollywood Reporter again. It says the latest offshore betting odds for the next Disney CEO. It says to some degree, this is all a crapshoot. Remember when Todd Staggs, who was a shoo-in? So let's take a minute from parsing the daily industry news cycle for clues about who's ahead in the succession race and talk to the odds makers. And they talk about the internal candidates still being the same people we talked about before. The Disney brand is incredibly sacred both internally and externally, so the temptation to stay in-house is probably strong, but equally the streaming space is so competitive now that they can't rest on their laurels at all, Mason says. It says, interesting market, this one. BetOnline's first outside Disney candidate is Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos, who recently moved from 12-1 to 8-1, and it is clear why a streaming-first company would want Sarandos, but the former Netflix chief content officer has regularly denied interest in the post. He recently quipped that he would rather run Saturday Night Live than Disney. The argument for Sarandos to be interested goes sort of like this. Ted has already proven everything that can be proven as CEO or co-CEO of Netflix, and that co-CEO thing could bother him. On some level, Disney has to be attractive to Sarandos. It has the IP that Netflix has, thus far, been unsuccessful in building. Tons of it. And Disney has real parks, not mall space. Disney's future is dependent upon beating Netflix at its own streaming game. They'll never beat Netflix. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Why not be the CEO who does all that and not the CEO who thwarts it? Brian Robbins, one of Paramount Global's Office of the CEO trio, is trending in the other direction per the odds makers. Robbins and Sarandos essentially switched places, and Robbins was 8-1 and is now 12-1. Andrew Wilson, the CEO of Electronic Arts, is also 12-1, the first tie on the board. While Disney has some gaming ambitions, it does not currently have this much. And it says that BetOnline's odds, the value may not be here. And there's also David Zaslav, who has the book at 16-1. It says he's interesting because he's a large enough TV and film personality to fit the bill. Plus, want to know best way to get rid of $40 billion in gross debt? Leave it behind. Problems include Zaslav's recent perception in some corners of not being creator-friendly, something Zaz has contested through PR and pricey film deals, a positioning that certainly didn't do Chapek any favors. Plus, all Walt Disney Company shareholders need is one look at that Warner Brothers stock price, and it's likely a hard pass. James Gorman, the former Morgan Stanley chairman and the very guy leading the successor search, is a 50-1. Imagine going through all this pick just to pick yourself. That would be kind of funny. It's happened before, but Gorman is under enough pressure as it is just making someone else Disney CEO. And like Gorman, Walden, Diamaro, Pitaro, and Bergman serve on Disney's board, so it's hard to see that bet paying out. Now, another thing that I think a lot of people are thinking Josh Diamaro is in the lead here is he has shown up at a lot of different conferences where typically CEOs show up, and he has been basically representing Disney there. Moffett Nathanson's one of them. He also presented at South by Southwest, and he obviously presents everything at D23 events. So I think when it comes to the Disney CEO, like I said, I think outside blood is the best way to do it. I think they need new leadership, somebody who's not going to be an Igerite, somebody who brings a fresh vision of what to do and really reset Disney and set them, kind of like what Michael Eisner did with Disney in the 90s. Bring somebody in with a vision that's a little aggressive, willing to take some chances. And because I think Disney's in this habit, especially on the theme park side, of just basically trying to, they don't want to make a mistake and they want everything to be a sure bet and not taking chances and basically just following the lead of what Universal's doing, seeing that stuff works for them and implementing it in their own way in their parks. Now, obviously not on everything, but I don't think it's hard to argue when it comes to the theme park, and the Universal is really pushing things much more than Disney is. And when you're looking at this, I've always said I think a dual CEO setup for Disney makes the most sense. I think, again, you look at Eisner and Wells, I think that's a good setup for Disney. Just also, again, given you have the theme parks, which is the majority of the business for Disney, then you have streaming and the movie side, which are their own headaches of themselves. It's really difficult to be able to do all of that, very well, and also be, the CEO, put on the face you need to do. From a optics standpoint, D'Amaro, he has that. I mean, he has the pretty boy look. He's good with the fans. He knows what to say. He's a slick talker. So, like, on that end of things, he's good. Again, I don't think he's done a great job in the theme parks, but he does fit the mold of what a CEO would probably be. Now, Iger has been consulting with Kevin Mayer, Tom Staggs, who run Candle Media, which is kind of interesting. A lot of people wondered if they were going to be in the running for this, because they were in the running for the CEO position the last time around. It doesn't seem like they're actually in the running for this, as Iger's consulting with them on this, which is kind of strange, but that's something that he's been doing during this time period. And he also has been having conversations with Ted Sarandos from Netflix as well, I think a lot of it's wondering about their dual CEO setup there. So, there is a chance they could go that route, but in terms of who it's going to be, if I were to guess at this point, it looks to me like it's going to be Josh D'Amaro. And I do think there's legitimacy to the rumors that Dana Walden's chances of becoming CEO definitely dropped after Kamala Harris lost, because her close, like, she's one of her best friends, and just given what that brings with it there. And as much as President Trump has mentioned and talked about Disney before, they may not want to go that route, as it's what I've been hearing. And so I think for that reason as well, I think D'Amaro makes a lot of sense as to why they would choose him. But again, I think outside hire is the way to go here. But if you're looking at who's the next CEO, you can bet on it if you want. But it's an ongoing thing. Again, they did say it's going to happen sometime in 2026. They have a whole committee set up to find this. And it's going to be very, very interesting once a new CEO comes in. Like, obviously, CEOs want to make their mark. They want to change things a little bit. They don't want to keep things status quo, because they're going to want to say, this is my tenure and I'm changing up things. Chapek came in and changed up a lot of the way that the company was set up. And then Iger came in and kind of reset it after that. And somebody can come in here. You can look at these budgets for the theme parks. You can look at the budgets for the movies. Like, a lot of these things could change, is why I've also said on the theme park side, even though these things have been announced, a lot of this stuff is moving and will happen, but the budgets could get cut. They could get in, they could increase, I suppose. Some of this stuff could definitely change down the road. When you're talking about Villains Land and some of these other things that are way off into the future, I mean, those things are very susceptible to budget cuts and budget changes, because they're just out of sight, out of mind. They're way down the line there. But it's seemingly Bob Iger is going to leave. He has extended his contract multiple times here. And even when he's gone, I do think he still stays on in some sort of like advisory role for a couple of years as well. So I don't think it's Bob Iger's just going to ride off into the sunset, be gone. I'm sure he's still going to be around and trying to, help the new person get into their position and all these things like that. So we'll have to keep an eye on what changes here, anything like that. And supposedly we'll hear about this in 2026. And if anything changes about that, we will talk about it on here. But either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, who do you think the next Disney CEO should be? And until next time, we'll see you in the parks.